This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Also sponsored by Mask Design, boldly going where no masking kit has gone before. Take your model to the next level of detail and accuracy with a masking kit from Mask Design. Visit Mask Design on Facebook or click the ordering link in the notes below the video. Also sponsored by Paragrafix. Add superior detail and accuracy to your models with photo etch, resin, and multimedia accessories from your first source for photo etch parts and more. Paragrafix. They count rivets so you don't have to. Visit Paragrafix at www.paragrafix.biz or click the link in the notes below this video.
What's up, fellow modelers? Will here. Welcome to the Engine's Chair. This episode, we're going to get an update, or I'm going to give you an update on the 1537 Enterprise B from Marshall Models. Made a little bit of progress on it. Started working on the bridge, the B deck is what I'm calling it, and getting the saucer cleaned up, ready to start doing some prep work on that. So, without further ado, give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. Alright guys, so I figured the best way to tackle this, the 1537 Enterprise B, is to kind of break it down into sections. So I think what I'm going to do first is start on the bridge and the, I guess you would call it the B deck, but impulse deck, whatever you want to call it. But this is basically what I'm going to start working on now. Now this is a 3D printed part, so this should be pretty easy to work with. The rest is, this is cast resin with a fiberglass backing, which I've still got to cut this yet. I'll work on that later. I want to tackle this separately. I want to work on this section first. And if you remember when I talked about what I'd mentioned in the opening video was I want to be able to access the internals of the saucer and of the secondary hull as much as possible. So for the saucer, the way that I'm planning on doing that is to cut this open, this whole section here, leave a lip around this for this to mount on. You see that's basically going to slide in there like that. Now I do have a little bit of a gap right here, and sorry if I'm getting my head in the viewfinder, and a little bit right here where this doesn't quite conform to the same shape as this part. So what I'm going to have to do is fill this in a little bit to get the shape of this part, and then it's not so big of a gap that I think it's going to be noticeable if I just fill that in with because the other option, the only way to fix that that I can think of would be maybe to sand along this, but then I'd have a gap all the way around it and I'd have to fill it in anyway. So I'll tackle that later when I tackle the top of the saucer. The main thing I want to do right now is deal with getting all this done. So if I'm going to cut all this open, I want this piece here to be one piece. So I'm going to glue all this together, this piece and this piece. And I think this will fit into place enough to where I shouldn't have an issue with any light leaks. It fits pretty snug in here, like I said, except for this gap right here and a little bit of a gap right here. And even if it did, there's other ways I can address that if I need to. But that way, if I do all this here as one section, I could pop this out, and then I'll have an opening here to where I can access the internals of the saucer, the lighting, or anything like that that I may need to get to. So that is my plan. So with that in the thinking, what I want to do is get this piece, and this piece glued together. You can see it's got a little bit of a rise to it, so I may have to put a little bit of heat on that to kind of get that to settle down. But I think I can get this to, and I may have to use magnets as well, possibly put some magnets on the bottom of this, so when I set it in place, the magnets will kind of keep it pressed down. But you can see that clear part here. Cass over at Lake Monster Details cast this in clear for me, and let me focus this so you can see the details on it. But he did a really great job. It picked up the details really fine. If I can get this to focus right. But you can see those windows on the officer's lounge on the back there, and then I think you've got two windows on the side here and on this side. Yep, you can see them right there. These two windows right here. So those are, I'm either going to have to make masks for them, or I will paint this, light block it, and then just use my pointer or something else to remove the paint from the windows themselves. They are pretty well recessed, so I should be able to, if I want to, come in here with a knife or something and scratch those off. But I do want to make sure they have a nice clean finish to them, so we'll take a look at that. I might actually be able to put some liquid mask in these. These have a bit of a depression to them, so put some liquid mask in there maybe, and light block this, paint it. I want to get it mounted, but I've got to cut an opening in here so that the light will light this, the windows on this part. So I've got to get a window, or not a window, but a hole cut in here, just big. I don't want to cut this whole thing out, but just big enough so that it lights the bridge section. So I'm going to get that cut. I'm also going to have to drill a hole, I believe right here at the back edge, I think is where the strobe needs to be for this. But I'm going to double check that. And I'll go ahead and get that hole drilled as well, so that way I can run an SMD in here for the strobe light for this. But we'll get that done, get this in place, and this piece here can glue in place. That's already cut open for this, so I don't have to worry about that. Get that glued in place, and then get this whole thing glued together. That way I can kind of start working on any seams. I've got a little bit of a seam here I'm going to have to work on. There may be a little bit of a gap I've got to fill around here. I'll probably do all that with perfect plastic putty, because I don't want to have to sand too much around this detail, because there is some fine detail along here that I don't want to lose. And then there are two fins that have to be glued on either side here, so I'll probably get those in place as well. Then we've got to look at, let me pull it up. We got to look at what's got to be done to paint this. Now, I am going to go with a white primer as the base for this, just like in a lot of the, like I did with the Grissom. A lot of the builds that Mass Design, that Gary over at Mass Design uses, he starts off with a white primer. And recently I think he switched to a white matte paint, because the primer was actually getting kind of a gloss to it these days. But let me log in here and get this pulled up. But I think I'll start with a white base coat, a white primer. And I got to work out the colors that I'm going to use for the, let's see, where are we at here? Pull this up. for the Aztecs. And the saucer is going to be a bit of a complicated piece to figure out exactly how I'm going to do the Aztecs on that, because the Aztecs on that seem to have a lot of different layers to it. On the, oh, where's that? Let's see. The main concern right now, though, is looking at this section here and what needs to be done about painting that. So I don't think that one's going to be as difficult of a pattern to figure out. It's not, definitely not as complicated as the saucer section is. A lot of it's going to be that teal colored paint. I say teal colored, but I think they call it cyan, or however you pronounce it. It's kind of a greenish blue. And let me grab the paint I'm going to use so I can show you that. Give me 1 second. Alright, so in looking at pictures of the studio model, here is one picture showing the impulse deck, which we've got to get painted back here. And looking at that kind of teal, cyan color, whatever you want to call it, this is what I've come up with. And you see I've done a couple different paint color tests. I don't remember what the other two colors were, but the color I decided to go with was this lighter kind of greenish blue, kind of aqua color looking. You know, there's a lot of different terms you could use to describe this color. This one was too dark, and I still feel like looking at the studio model, this color was a little bit too dark, and I thought this color looked a little bit better. So what I'm going with is a Folk Art Adrift is what that paint's called. And this is going to be my green accent color that I'm going to use for the model, because I think, to my eye, that looks pretty close to what the studio model looks like. And so when we look at this picture of the studio model, you can see those impulse decks. I've got to paint the impulse crystal. Crystal's got to be painted. They are kind of a gray or a silver color for the framework for those impulse. And then again, you've got silver, it looks like, in between those little boxes going up towards the back from the impulse crystals. So I got to do that. And you'll see there's some light Aztecing or accent painting in between those two. And you've got some more forward of that. If we look at another picture, I think I've got one showing a straight down shot here somewhere. Let's see where that's at. A lot of the same pictures. Let's see. Let's take a look at this one. Bear with me. I know I've got a better picture here somewhere, kind of showing a top-down view of what we've got to do with this. Alright, so we see there's kind of a pattern on this one. And actually, let me switch this around a minute. Give me 1 second. Alright guys, so this is a photo album that Mr. Hagen Miller over at Star Trek Modelers Group on Facebook shared with me. He's got a pretty extensive library of photos of the Excelsior and of the Enterprise B. He's got some pictures mixed in here of the original Excelsior model. And then he's also got some pictures in here of the Greg Jean 3-foot model. It can be kind of tricky to figure out the different details, but the Enterprise is pretty easy to tell because you've got that kind of teal green paint scheme as far as the accenting. But what I've got to work out is the I'm gonna have to come up with some masking for, and I'm looking for I know I've got some pictures of the top of that one's small. Usually he's got another larger picture in here somewhere. I've got to work out the paint scheme and masks for the top of this this B deck, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. Let me see about this one here. Okay. If I can zoom in. All right, so you can kind of see there's a pattern here that's got to be worked out. The impulse crystals, there's a frame on those. Those are silver. These look like they're silver. The dome of the bridge looks like it's silver. And then you've got kind of a tannish gold maybe look around the front here. There's some accents down here that look like a blue-gray. And this looks like it's silver as well. But I got to figure out masking for all of this, and that's what's going to take me a little bit of work to do to get that done. So a couple things I got to work on. So let me get some work done on that, and once I get something worth coming back and showing everybody, we will come back and take a look at it. All right, so here's what I'm working on now. I've got the impulse deck and the bridge glued in place. You can see where I've opened that up on the underside here, and that's going to let the light come through and light that piece, or light the bridge. So I've got that worked out, and what I'm working on now is trying to figure out how I want to do. I don't really think you call this Aztec. It's more pinstriping that's done on this this B deck here. I'm calling it the B deck, but I have to look at a schematic, see what it's actually referred to as. But it's more pinstriping, and then in the back here you've got some different shapes. This one here has just got basically a thick line that comes up, and then there's like a shape that goes around, the curved shape at the front here that has to be done. And then back here you just got you got a little square here, and then another little shape back here. So what I've done is I've put masking tape on and just followed the panel lines and cut out the masking tape. So I have basically what this does is gives me the general shape that I need to work with to put the pinstriping in place. But more importantly, it gives me the size of these panels, so that way I know what I need to stay within, or I need to be, whereabouts I need to be when I go to do those lines. So my next step is basically I'm going to take these off, and these may be a little imperfect in spots, but that's okay, because when I go into my program, some people use I think like Corel Draw, or they use one of the Adobe products. I'm basically just going to use my Cricut software that comes with it. And it lets me do different shapes in that, and I can make my masks that way. But I'm going to put it on this paper, and that's basically going to let me scan this in. And when I scan it in, I will have my basic shapes to work with. So it should be a pretty simple and straightforward process of just adding in the shapes I need to make the pinstriping that needs to go in place. And then once I've got that, try back here. Once I've got that worked out, I can cut those masks with my Cricut, and I will be ready to paint this section. Obviously, I've got some more work to do this before it's ready for paint, but I wanted to go ahead and get this done before I did anything else on this. And I should also note, I'd mentioned the fins. Well, the Enterprise B doesn't have those fins. I was thinking about the Excelsior that has the two fins on the back. This kit did come with those fins, but I don't need them because, like I said, the Enterprise B did not have those fins on it. So I won't need to add those, which will make my job a little bit easier because this can just get painted. Although it's got a slight depression here on both sides for those fins, so I may need to do a little bit of sanding to remove that because I don't need that depression since I'm not going to need the fins. So that's what I'm going to work on next. I'm going to work on getting these scanned in, work on doing my pinstriping. And I only had to do one side because this is basically a mirror of this side. So same thing with the back part here. I can just do this panel, and then copy it, mirror it, and then I'll have my 4 panels that I need for this. And then of course this panel and this panel, and then most of the rest of this is going to be our kind of teal green accent paint. So I got to work out masking for that as well, though, because I need to be able to mask off these areas where that teal paint needs to go so nothing else gets painted on. But I want to get these pinstripes worked out first, and then I'll start working on that. So let me work on that a bit, and we'll come back and take a look. All right, so here's where I'm at on getting this B-deck impulse bridge section done for the 1537. You can see that bridge. You can see it a little bit better now that I've got a black paint on it, a black primer coat on it. And I've got the windows masked except for the lounge on the back. There's no way my Cricut's going to cut small enough mask for that. So I'm just going to scratch the paint off and hope I can do a good job doing that. But the oval and the circular windows are masked, so I'll just have to pull those masks off after I get the final white coat of primer on here. But it's all glued together. I've worked out all these seams using my perfect plastic putty. I just worked it into the seam, let it dry, came in with a Q-tip, cleaned it up. Same for the seam around this bridge here. You can see that seam's nice and cleaned up. You can't even tell it's there, except this little part around here in the front maybe, but that's all right. And the back section looks good as well. So I've just about got the masks ready to do that that pattern that needs to be done on here, that pinstriping and that. Now, two other things I should mention is, one, I've filled in and sanded. There's two vents on either side here. Those don't appear to be on the Enterprise C model. So I've taken those off, and as I said, those fins aren't on the Enterprise. I said Enterprise C, Enterprise B model. They're not on the Enterprise B, and these fins aren't on the Enterprise B, so I took out those recessed areas where those fins were supposed to go. So those are filled in. The other thing is I have filled in some of the windows on the side here, because when you look at pictures of the studio model of the Enterprise C, it's got way fewer windows than the Excelsior had around this deck here. So there's no windows on the Enterprise B back past the leading edge of the impulse deck here. So you've got one window like right at the leading edge, and then all these other windows, there were like three other windows. I think there was a pair of two here maybe, and then one way back here. Those aren't on the Enterprise B model. So I filled those in. You can see still where I've only put one primer coat on here, so they haven't completely covered it, but you can see where I filled in some of those other windows. And then on the front here, there were several windows to fill in, because when you got these three in the middle here, and then you've got just a couple fewer windows around the front edge here. So I filled all those in, and you can also see I've got these all drilled out. But what I'm working on right now is printing up some clear resin inserts, because I did try filling these in with the UV resin, and I just wasn't getting a satisfactory result to where all these windows were going to light even. Some of them, just because of the way the resin cures, you get air pockets in them, and they just weren't looking good to me. So I opened them all back up, and I've got some inserts that are going to slide in here that I can glue in place and then sand flush, and I think those resin inserts are going to look better. So I'm working on that now, and I'm going to finalize that pinstriping for the top of the deck here, and we'll be ready to lay down. I think right now, well, I can't really put my white primer coat on until I get these windows filled in, because I'm going to have to do some sanding to get them flush, and then I'm going to have to mask those off as well. So we'll come back and take a look after I get those window inserts in and get those sanded, and we'll take a look, and then I'll put the white primer coat on here, and we'll be pretty close to being done with this section. I'll just have to do that pinstriping and also do the impulse crystals back here. So give me a little bit and we'll come back and take a look. Alright, so I've gotten a bit of work done on this. You can see on the saucer I've cleaned it up around the edge. I've gotten rid of that excess fiberglass that was kind of hanging out. Still got some work to do though to get the bottom and the upper to kind of go together better. But I've got it kind of roughed in a bit more so that it's a little bit easier to kind of see what I'm working with here. You can see I've had to make some cuts in order to fit these. I guess you can call these extra impulse engines on it, and but you can also do these as I think these at one point were intended to be shuttle bays, is what I was told, and they actually do. I think Marshall Models actually has a set of decals, and I may have shown this already, that you can turn this into a shuttle bay if you want to instead of the impulse engines. But since these were engines in the movie Generations, that's what we're going to do with these. So, but you see, I've had to modify, cut that out quite a bit, and I may have cut out just a little bit too much, but that's all right. I had to make some modifications in order to get these to fit as close as possible up here in here and match that panel line. You see that panel line that it's got to match that goes around here. So it pretty much matches that. I just got to work them in a little bit more, do a little filing, a little sanding here to get them in, and then I'm going to have quite a bit of putty work because there are some gaps on each side of this, and that's not for me necessarily overcutting it, but I pretty much cut it to where it was showing that recessed area in here. But I think I should have left a little bit of a shelf right here like I did on this side. This side here, you can see I left a little bit of material there for this top to kind of catch on to. I didn't do that on this side. And I think I'm probably going to have to use some sheet styrene or something to help support that, so that way this impulse deck, when I put it on here, will stay up even with this part of the top part of the saucer. But I've got that worked out, and there's no instructions for this. At least I don't have any right now. I think they were working on some instructions, but I haven't seen a set of them yet. So I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants on this because I've just kind of got to work out things the best way that I can. And there's some issues that are going to have to be addressed on this. For example, we'll talk about this in a minute. For example, you can see on here where there is a set of, let me try focusing this a little bit for you. You see if it's not washing out, and it probably is. There you go. There's a set of windows that are supposed to here, but they run into the engine. And I think that's because that's where they originally were on the Excelsior model. And they completely redid the saucer, though, when they did the Enterprise B model. They used the Excelsior model, but they heavily modified the hull. And the saucer is completely new. Somewhere out there, somebody has the original saucer for the Excelsior model. It's still out there. It still exists. I don't know whose collection it's in. I'm sure it's in somebody's collection. But they redid the saucer for the Enterprise B, so it's a completely different saucer. So these windows are a bit off on a couple of areas. So I'm going to have to fix that myself. I'm going to have to just fill these in and move them over about here. But then there's also a possibility I'm going to have to move all these windows some, because otherwise these windows are going to be closer to this navigational light, and then you're going to have a bigger gap to this set of windows, and it's just not going to look right. If you look at the studio model, let me pull up a picture for you real quick and show you this. All right, but if you look at that studio model, you can see those windows are pretty much centered between that impulse deck, I guess you call it auxiliary impulse deck, and the RCS thruster there. You can see it's centered there. And that set of windows is the same distance from that RCS thruster as the windows more forward on the saucer. So you see, I'm going to have to work that out, and there's a good chance I'm going to have to move all these window locations around, which is going to be a bit of work, but they got to be drilled out anyway. It would really suck if they were already open and I've got to fill them in just to drill new ones, because I'm terrible at doing oval windows, but I'm just going to have to take my time with it and do the best I can with it. So that's got to be worked out. The other issue I'm running into is that no matter what I do, and I've tried to do this a couple different ways, no matter what I do, I cannot get all the RCS thrusters on the bottom to line up with the top. So for example, right now I've got this RCS thruster here lined up, and this RCS thruster here in the front is pretty much lined up. But when you get to the back here, the top is here and the bottom RCS thruster is here. So they're off by about, they're off. Well, I'll tell you what, this far edge, this right edge, as I'm looking at this RCS thruster on the bottom, is here. And it's at the far left edge of the top part of the RCS thruster, if you understand what I'm saying. So again, I'm trying to focus here, and hopefully I can do this without the light washing it out too much. But you can see the bottom of that RCS thruster there. There's the corner, and you see how far over the top one is. So that's not a big deal. I'll have to fill them in and rescribe them on the bottom. I'd rather do it on the bottom than on the top, because the bottom's going to be less observed than the top, and plus it's a little easier for me to redo that scribe on the bottom than it is to totally totally shift this RCS thrusters, all these RCS thrusters around as needed. But yeah, so you can see the same thing on this side with that set of windows being cut off by the that auxiliary impulse deck. And my camera's really washing stuff out. There you go. Now you can see it. So that's got to be fixed. But other than that, it's just a matter of getting this this bottom sanded and filed and mated as best as possible. But of course I can't really do any final sanding and blending with this until I get the lighting done inside and all that. I am going to cut this open, like I had said in my opening video. I'm going to cut this open because this deck will pretty much just sit in the place there. The only issue I've got right now with this is that this curve on the saucer piece does not exactly match the curve of this 3D printed part. So I'm going to have to do a little fill here, and it's just going to have to do. I don't see any other way to really fix this other than if I was to sand out this front more, but then it's going to be noticeable that you're missing a little bit of this front edge here. So I think the best thing to do is, it's not a big gap, but it's a noticeable gap. So I'm gonna have to fill that in and just go with it. But that's an issue I have to work with there. And then I've got the deck in. I've pretty much got this top part that was kind of bowed a little bit. It's pretty much flattened out now that I've glued it to the structure for the impulse deck here. And you see I've got my putty around this. I'm working on getting that blended in. Then I will do I'll do another black coat here. I did white on it just to kind of see how everything was looking. Because sometimes you can see stuff better with black, and sometimes it's easier to see it with white. And I can see that I need to do a little more filling on these fins here, these where these vents were, because I don't need the vents on this model. And I've got to fill in also where that fin was. There's a little bit of a depression here that I didn't notice before. That's got to be filled in, sanded smooth. And then I had a little bit of a gap from where I'd filled in around this impulse deck, or the impulse crystal deck, and I've got to fill that in some more and do some more work on that. So that's what I'll be working on. I did have to do a little more work filling in these windows, because once I got that first coat of paint on, I could tell you could still see where they were at. But they're all filled in now, and I'm going to work on blending this in, and that's where I'm at on it. So I don't want to make this video too long. I think I'm getting close to 30 minutes right now on this, just on this little bit that I've gotten done. But it's going to be a long build. There's a lot of stuff to do to this, a lot of work that's got to be done. You know, as you can see, there's some modifications that got to be done to the hull to make those auxiliary impulse engines fit. And I'm sure there's going to be other mods I'm going to have to do as well. We do have to remove the molded in marker lights and drill those out. So we've got to remove those. And the phaser banks, I've got to decide whether I want to remove those and make them flat or just leave them as they are. I don't think on the studio model, I've got to double check. Most of the studio models, these were not raised details. These were just painted on details. But I've got to double check with the Enterprise B model and make sure that that's the same case. I think it is. I think these were just painted on details and not raised like they actually are on the model. But I'll double check it. I don't know that I'm going to worry about that though. I'll probably just go with it. And leave it as it is, because I've got enough work to do on this model. So, but anyway, that's pretty much where I'm at with this, guys. When we come back, hopefully I'll have this deck pretty much finished, and we'll be ready to do the paint on the bridge, the B deck, and then this impulse deck. We'll be ready to get that all painted up and done, and then I can start focusing on more of this saucer and getting it all well, we got to do the lighting on it, but I've got to get these windows situated first before I can work on any lighting. And I've got to get those repositioned and re-drilled. So that's going to take a bit of work. But when we come back next episode for this, And again, remember, it might be a little bit before I get another episode out on this, because this is going to be a slow burn of a build for me. But and I've got several other builds going on that I'm trying to get done. This won't be, there's no way I'll have this ready for Wonderfest next year. This is going to be probably a 2-year build for me, and because I want to take my time and do it right. So I'm not in a hurry to get this done. I do want to get that Ian Lawrence tribute build, try to get that done for next Wonderfest. We got 10 months and counting, less than 10 months now and counting. Time's just going by really fast. I've kind of got that Reliant build going full speed right now. I've also got work going on in that 1/1000 Excelsior build. So a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff trying to get done. So bear with me, but I will give another update on this when it's available. So again, thank you everybody for watching this. Thank you for the feedback. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but it helps me out tremendously with my sponsors. And again, as always, my sponsors are Gus over at GCals, Gary over at Mass Design, Paul over at Paragrafix, and Cass over at Lake Monster Details. Thank you to all those guys for your assistance and support. I'm sure I will need some stuff for this model. If I hadn't mentioned already, Cass did do the bridge for me in that clear. He cast that in clear for me because it came opaque with the kit. So thank you to Cass for doing that. Hopefully they'll be making that part, or they'll be making that part available in clear for everybody, because it's going to be much easier to light this with this in clear. But I'm sure I'm going to need some other stuff from some of my other sponsors, and looking forward to getting this build done right. So again, thank you everybody for watching. Till next time, keep modeling.